Okay, we are ready now. Okay, thank you everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Wednesday Forum, Interweaving Wisdom every Wednesday. And thank you for your coming on this second Wednesday Forum of this year. Wednesday Forum is a weekly discussion jointly organized by CRCS, UGM, and ICRS. As its name suggests, CRCS, or Center for Religious and Cross-Cultural Studies, offers master's degree on religious studies at graduate school, UGM, while ICRS is Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies, a consortium consisting of 3 universities, UGM, UIN Sunan Kalijaga, and UKDW. ICRS also located at graduate school UGM. Wait a minute. And now for today, we will talk deeply about boarding crossing women, para perempuan pelintas batas. Women are one of the most vulnerable groups in a patriarchal society dealing with gender-based violence that results in discrimination, marginalization, and as bad as exploitation. Thus, women's voices and experience are essential to the table of dialogue. And this is what Suryaningsih Mila has been done through her research project. She brought 2 groups of grassroots Muslim and Christian women, lay people, and not an expert, into another space of dialogue through cross-textual reading. So on this Wednesday Forum, Mila will share interesting, unexpected, touching, and fruitful stories from the encounters of women crossing borders in village of North Wendewa and Watu, Central Sumba. Mila is graduated from ICRS and a lecturer of Christian Church of Sumba Theological Seminary, also known as STT GKS Lewa. So without further ado, Kak Mila, you have 45 minutes for presentation, and after that, we will have 45 minutes for discussion. So every soul in this forum, please welcome Suryaningsih Mila.
Okay, thank you for the time given to me. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all well and healthy. Thank you for CRCS and ICRS for giving me opportunity to share with all of you my dissertation research in this prestigious discussion forum. I'm very delighted to be here and to discuss with all of you. Your comments and inputs are needed to be followed up in further studies or further research. Can you help me with share screen? Please share screen. Yeah. Okay, the title of my research is Border Crossing Women, a Cross-Communitarian Reading of Muslim and Christian Women in North Wendewa and Watu Asa Village, Central of Sumba. Next slide. I will start with the presentation outlines that includes research background, research questions, theoretical framework, research method, research finding, conclusion, and recommendations. Next slide. Here I will share the backgrounds of my research that come up with general issues around the research, such as the vulnerable relationship among interreligious groups in a plural society in many places in Indonesia. This can be seen through the exclusive attitude or intolerant attitude of some religious groups or religious people. In some cases, even though they show a tolerant life in neighborhood, but actually it is not pure tolerant because they still live in tension and prejudices to build a wall of boundary that can be accessed by other groups. In living in a broader society, they spread hatred instead peace. They become fragile to any religious issues. The second one, the relationship among religious groups is like an iceberg phenomenon, which is smooth in the surface, but has many layers of tension that may explode to violent conflicts if it is not well managed. For this reason, this research arises to respond the need of interreligious groups to have an in-depth dialogue that amplifies their daily dialogue. Here, there is an urgency of text-based dialogue or scriptural dialogue to balance a daily-based dialogue. And this research aims to bring interreligious groups to experience a deep talk around religious texts and to seek the possibility of grassroots interreligious communities, including women's communities, to adventure on scriptural dialogue. Next slide. Why is communitarian cross-textual reading? Actually, this model of reading is another model of text-based dialogue of interreligious communities for mutual learning and mutual growth. And this model of interreligious reading provides a space for two interreligious groups with hybrid identity to experience dialogue by crossing their two different texts that at least have similar sound and concern. And this model of reading should be done in a context of hybrid identity of the interreligious groups. The fact of hybridity lived by the interreligious people in North Wendewa and Watu Asa village, central of Sumba. Next slide. Why do I choose women's group? Actually, interreligious reading is not only provided for women, but since grassroots women's voices are almost absent in many dialogue forums, then it is important for me to highlight on women's participation in this model of dialogue. So I will describe briefly about the situation of Muslim and Christian women in North Wendewa and Watu Asa village. As we know, in many places, women have influential contribution to peacekeeping and peacebuilding works in many places, including in the post-conflict areas. So we can read from many previous research. For instance, in the case of Maluku, Poso, there are many women's groups, interreligious women's groups at the grassroots level who initiative to have dialogue after the conflict. So during the conflict, because they are the most vulnerable groups during the violent conflict. And what I see in the two villages, women's groups are actively engaging through a dialogue of life by sharing meals, sharing clean water, offering help, and supporting one another in the neighborhood. They also have an intense encounter in many traditional events, such as marriage event, death event, or any other traditional events. And both Muslim and Christian women, and also Marapu women in these two villages have their own, both Muslim and Christian women have their own religious organization, such as Majelis Taklim for Muslim women and Women's Commission or Fellowship, Women's Fellowship in Bahasa Indonesia, Komisi Perempuan for Christian women. And another point is, in these two villages, especially in Watu Asa village, not only Muslim women and Christian women who have a strong engagement or who have daily dialogue, but also with the Marapu women. But so based on this background, I also found for me the substantial issue is the absence of women's participation in dialogue forums as arranged by the Religious Harmony Forum in Central Sumba, even though women have colored the dialogue of life in their daily encounter, but their voices in many formal dialogue are not heard or are not really making sense, and then they are not invited to attend such formal dialogue. Next slide. Why do I choose North Wendewa and Watu Asa village? Start with North Wendewa. North Wendewa is a village with the majority Muslim, then followed by Christian. And it is the largest Muslim population in Central Sumba and in Sumba in general, a village with the largest Muslim population. You can see the number of population. And North Wendewa is also well known as a tolerant village by the Ministry of Religious Affairs of Central Sumba, which symbolized by a monument in the form of Sumbanis traditional house. And the philosophy of the house is Tanyanyu Watulisi in local language, which means the strong solidarity of the people who live in the one land, regardless of their religious, social status, economic, education, and ethnicity backgrounds. And most of the community in this village are local Muslims or Sumbanese Muslim, and the rest are migrant Muslim from Bima and Andanis, while most of the Christian community are native Memberonese. And people here are living in the socio-religio-cultural hybridity. Next. And Watu Asa is a village with the majority Christian, then followed by Marapu and Christian. And almost all Christians and Marap and Muslims were converted from Marapu, and they came from the one village in this village, or in one kampung. They come from one kampung. And Christians, Muslim, and Marapu are interconnected by a strong kinship ties. Interestingly, in this village, there is no migrant Muslims. They are all local Muslims. Both Muslims and Christians are living with hybrid identity as Muslim and Christians who are rooted in Sumbanese cultural values that reflect the Marapu values. And the Marapu values and the local wisdom are part of the daily lives of the people. Even though they are part of the religious groups, but they are still like practicing such Marapu values in their daily activities. Next slide. Yeah, here is the picture of the monument of House of Tolerance as a cultural symbols of interreligious relationship in the Mamboro land. Yeah. Next slide. So in the practice of communitarian cross-textual reading, I employ the two selected texts from the Quran and the Bible, which is highlight on the story of women's struggle to save the male babies of Israel in the story of Moses, which is written in the Quran, in the Surah Al-Qasas 28, and in the Bible, in the book of Exodus chapter 1 and 2. What I found from these two stories are, two stories are quite similar, even though they came from different different religious traditions, and both stories are highlighting on the struggle of women against the cruelty of King Pharaoh. And both stories are talking about women's solidarity in saving the male babies of Israel. So it is in line with pro-life action. Next slide. Yeah. And based on the description above, then I formulate 3 research questions. First one, how are the dynamics, the process of reading, the interaction, the obstacles of women crossing the religious border to a communitarian cross-textual reading on the stories of women surrounding Moses in Christian and Islamic tradition by Christian women and Muslim women in North Wendewa and Watu Asa village central of Sumba. And the second one, what are the findings of cross-textual reading, the commonalities, differences after crossing the 2 different texts by Christian women and Muslim women in North Wendewa and Watu Asa village? And to what extent the participation of Muslim and Christian women in a communitarian cross-textual reading from feminist perspectives? Yeah, next slide. Yeah. Okay. In this research, sorry. Yeah. In this research, I employ a qualitative method. Qualitative method in the form of focus group discussion, which is held in several meetings. And then to collect the data, I employ in-depth interview with the women's participants and the religious leaders, religious figures, and the traditional figures in the 2 villages. And also I did participant observation. I live in among the 2 communities in the 2 villages. Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Here is my chapter outlines, because this part of my dissertation. This is my dissertation research. Chapter 1 is introduction. Chapter 2, theoretical framework, which discusses the theory of interreligious hermeneutics in the frame of interreligious dialogue, and the theory of cross-communitarian reading as a collaboration of the cross-textual reading and the intercultural reading, along with feminist reading of the scriptures in the context of Islam and Christianity. Chapter 3, demographic context of North Wendewa and Watu as a village within the relations of Christians and Muslims. This chapter describes the profile of North Wendewa and Watu as a village with the religious, economic, educational context. Besides, in this chapter, there will be a brief history of Christianity and Islam in the Mamboro area, especially in the two villages. Chapter 4, the dynamics of communitarian cross-textual reading. This chapter describes the stages of cross-textual reading, starting with reading in each community or internal reading, along with the participant profiles and the background of religious women's organization. Again, this chapter will also describe the process of communitarian cross-textual reading in the two villages in terms how women conduct dialogue and how they approach the two selected texts within the challenges they face. Chapter 5. A feminist analysis and critical evaluation of the dynamics of communitarian cross-textual reading in North Wendewa and Watu Asa village. This chapter focuses on feminist analysis of Muslim and women's activism within their internal organizations. And this chapter also highlights on the discussion of theories of interreligious hermeneutics, including cross-textual reading, intercultural reading, and feminist interpretation, with the feminist analysis on the dynamics of cross-communitarian reading among women's groups. Chapter 6, conclusion, that focuses on research findings and arguments with the recommendations. Yeah. Next slide. In this work, I elaborate some theories of interreligious dialogue related to interreligious reading, multi-faith or dialogical hermeneutics, cross-textual reading, intercultural reading, communitarian cross-textual reading, and feminist interpretation. First one, start with interreligious dialogue and interreligious reading or interreligious hermeneutics. Some scholars I referred discusses about the importance of interreligious dialogue as a process of welcoming other groups as friends along the journey of mutual spiritual growth. Dealing with interreligious reading, it demands several conditions such as the hermeneutical evaluation of each group, because one model of reading can be interreligious when it is accepted and applied by interreligious groups. Therefore, interreligious reading challenges each group to evaluate their interpretation model after encountering different model of reading. Again, again, interreligious reading occurs in an interaction or dialogue of interreligious groups. So here, the dialogue of the people around the text taking significant roles. The second one, theories of multi-faith or dialogical hermeneutics and cross-textual reading. Some Asian, actually, this model of reading came from some Asian Christian, Asian biblical scholars who discuss about multi-faith hermeneutics. They are Sugirta Raja, Kwok Puilan, and in a more specific model of cross-textual reading, there are Arsili and Daniel Listijabudi. These scholars propose multi-faith hermeneutics in response to the multicultural and multi-scriptural phenomenon in Asia and multifaceted reality of Asian people. Arsili contributes cross-textual reading in the light of post-colonial reading, as his critiques to the two conventional model of reading, such as text alone and text context, which is only focusing on the Bible as the source of wisdom. So therefore, in his work, Lee emphasized that the Bible is in equal relationship with many other scriptures. So the Bible is not only the only one, the only source of wisdom, but is only one among many sources of wisdoms. And according to Lee, a cross-textual hermeneutics should align with two significant investigations that develop in two different disciplines. As the first, reading two texts together for mutual enlightenment in cross-scriptural studies, and reading the Bible through Asian religio-cultural texts in cross-textual biblical hermeneutics. Yeah, Lee's idea, or the idea of R.C. Lee of cross-textual hermeneutics, is criticized and applied critically by Daniel Istijabudi in his dissertation work, a cross-textual reading of stories of Dewaruchi and Jacob at the Jabbok as a contribution to Asian multi-faith hermeneutics. And in his research, Istijabudi acts or is taking role as the reader from the academic sphere, academic context, who come to read two different texts and cross them for mutual enrichment. So Lee's idea or writings inspired Istijabudi, especially on the reading two texts together for mutual enlightenment in cross-scriptural studies, inspired Istijabudi to dialogue the biblical text and the Kejawen text, not for comparing them, but rather crossing them for mutual enrichment or for mutual growth. So although Istijabudi referred to Lee's idea in his dissertation work, but he humbly offered several critiques and as well as additions to that previous theory of Lee. The first one, according to Istijabudi, it is important to have an awareness that this model is not easy to apply in all Asian contexts, even though it has a hybrid background, because it intersects with various other layers. And the second one, the selection of reading texts cannot only be general and random, but must at least have the same concerns and can be read in a socio-religio-cultural hybrid context. The third one, applying cross-textual as academic way of reading for two different texts demands big efforts. Fourth one, in applying this model, it is important to also pay attention to the selected text and the appropriated hermeneutic method in reading the text. Here, cross-textual reading needs to involve other methods of interpretation or other methods of reading. And the fifth one, it is not enough just to find the similarities and differences between two texts as offered by R.C. Lee, but according to Istijabudi, it is important to resonate the similarities and to create the categories of the differences, such as appreciative differences, enriching differences, and irreconcilable differences. And the idea of cross-communitarian reading itself came from Daniel Istijabudi in the last part of his dissertation research. After conducting cross-textual reading followed the pattern of R.C. Lee, then developed by Istijabudi, at the last part of his dissertation, Istijabudi ended up with transformative communitarian hermeneutic that opens space for communities, for religious communities to enter the area of interreligious hermeneutics. And Istijabudi considered the importance of transformative communitarian hermeneutics in two specific contexts. First, among Christian communities, two groups from Christian communities, two groups from different locus or different contexts came to approach or to read one part of the Bible, the similar part of the Bible. And the second one, between Christian and other religious communities. And here, Istijabudi encouraged dialogue through scriptural learning, both in the Christian circle itself and in the context of interreligious communities. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, here the pattern of cross-textual reading from Daniel Istijabudi's work. and he developed the theory of concept of cross-textual reading from Arsili. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. Okay. In my research, in the process of communitarian cross-textual reading, so I conduct, I invite two religious groups, Muslim women and Christian women, in two villages to have their own, to come to the cross-textual reading meeting, to come to read, to exchange the sacred text. And as a researcher, I come with, I try to introduce this the story of women surrounding Moses into different traditions in the Quran and in the Bible. And I introduce it to the women's communities. So they accept it because they thought it is in line with their daily activities as women, and it is in line with their spirit as women. And the theme is, for them, it is easy to understand. And so the process of reading start with the preparation or internal reading in each religious communities. So Muslim women read the Surah Al-Qasas 28 through the Tausiah in the Majelis Taklim gathering. So here, the Tausiah is delivered by the Ustads. So women, Muslim women, as usually, become the participants or the passive participants during the Majelis Taklim. Christian women who can discuss the book of Exodus chapter 1 and 2 freely by themselves, and only facilitated by the pastor in the women's Bible study meeting. And the process of reading, the communitarian reading, is held in 4 meetings. And the first meeting is introduction session. So in this meeting, in this session, both groups in 2 villages, because I conduct it in different time, because in different villages. So this is the process of reading in different 2 villages. So they start with reading the selected text, even though they already have an encounter, but they still read the text with their each group, the particular group, while also listening to the reading from other groups. So here they haven't they haven't exchanged their text. And in the second meeting, they start crossing the readings, finding the similarities and differences in the particular group. So they do crossing the readings, but they still within their own group. And in the third meeting, they move to exchange the reading, but in a mixed group discussion. So in each groups, there are Muslim and Christian participants who exchange the reading, directly exchange the reading in that group, and then discuss the similarities, the differences of the 2 different texts. In the fourth meeting, both women groups move to discuss the relevance of the text within their daily issues as women, such as they discuss about domestic violence issues, parenting issues, women's reproduction health, and any other issues they encounter in their daily lives. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. Here is a model of interreligious reading from Listi Jabudi. Actually, he hasn't practiced this model, and it is his proposal in the last part of his dissertation, and I tried to apply this model of reading in my dissertation work. So next slide. Yeah. Move to my research findings. In North Wendewa, I found that cross-textual reading ran to some extent. Both Muslim women, both Muslim groups, both women's groups, Muslim and Christian women, can exchange the two selected texts by only highlighting on the relevance of the two stories for women's life. And they draw the meaning of the text that speaks to their struggles today. So they just find what is the meaning of the text for their daily life. And here the activities of Muslim women in the Majelis Ta'lim is still under the control of the Ustads, especially the Tausiah as the area of Ustads. Even though when they come to, interestingly, when they come to cross-textual reading with Christian women, they can speak freely, they can share their mind, share their understanding, their reflection when they meet Christian women. But when they are in the Majelis Ta'lim circle, they just listen to the tausiah from Ustads. In Watu Asa village, cross-textual reading did not run effective due to several reasons. The low education background of women, the inactivity of women in religious activities, and here women are not used or to have formal meetings, including having discussion around the scripture, and women are busy working to meet their daily needs. And also here, another barrier is about the patriarchal culture that limits women's role in public space. So what I found here about the gender problems or gender gap exist in this village. And here women are more familiar with daily dialogue than having scriptural dialogue, because they are not used to speak or to discuss in the public space. Mostly they meet in the domestic area or in the daily encounter. Yeah, next slide. So how is the reading among women? Women's participants in the two villages did not employ such academic method of interpretation as practiced by many scholars. And the process of reading in the two villages is an atmosphere of local wisdom that becomes the foundation of interreligious groups relationship. And women's dialogue occurs in a warm, flexible, fun, and friendly conversation. And it differs from many mainstream discussion or dialogue. Yeah. Next slide. What happened when women come to a scriptural dialogue? Here it is important to highlight on the lens of women's ordinary readers. And and cross-textual reading is a space for women to discuss their problems while also reflecting from the reading. So their focus not only on the text, even though the basis of encounter is text, but their main concern during the discussion is not on the text. They just read the text and extract the meaning that are speak to their life. And here in a context of interreligious people, I found that the reading is more empirical and practical reading, or empirical and practical interpretation. The result is not a textual reflection, but more about daily life reflection. And women can color the space of cross-textual reading by bringing their experiences and voices. So as ordinary readers, they came with their understanding from their local context. Next slide. So here I can say cross-communitarian readings is in line with women's ordinary readers because it is done in a non-academic setting in the grassroots women's communities. And here the lens of women's ordinary readers is important. And the reading is empirical, practical, and reflective. And the results and the process of reading, the dynamics of reading challenge the mainstream interpretation method. So I can say women's reading is also legitimate reading as long as their reading aims to amplify their role as peacekeeper in the society, and as long as the reading help them to understand their tradition, and to find that they have they come from similar tradition. So during the process of reading, finally, both groups find that they have similar stories, which is written in the Bible and in the Quran. So they find that, why do we have similar stories? Because they never know before if in the Bible and in the Quran there are some stories that are quite similar, and some figures or some there are names, similar names such as Moses and any other names. Next slide. So the challenges from these readings, the process from the cross-textual readings in the grassroots communities, the authority of interpreting religious texts in every religious communities where sacred texts are not be interpreted openly. So here the challenge of religious authority or the interpretation authority. And the reading among texts, the reading of texts among grassroots communities cannot be categorized as authoritative interpretations for some religious groups that could become reference for the whole religious communities, because in every religion there are certain rules in the interpretation of sacred texts. The third one, the involvement of women's community collides with a patriarchal culture that limits women's activism in reading religious texts. The fourth one, reading of the text that is oriented to the reader's perspectives somehow can be trapped to the reader's subjectivity. Fifth one, each religious group has different approach or method in reading their sacred texts. And the sixth one, not all religious groups have an experience to read their sacred text, even in their, even in their inner circle. So it is impossible when they come to meet other groups to exchange their sacred text when they did not have the similar experience in their inner group. Next slide. From the findings in the field, it is clear that the practice of cross-textual reading or communitarian cross-textual reading in the interreligious communities at the grassroots level may occur in several conditions. First, religious communities that have a very good relationship or strong engagement. And the second one, the reading is more empirical and practical, that highlights on the reflections of women's daily experiences. Third one, the approach is more reader-centered because the meaning of the text is found by the readers themselves who come from particular context. Next slide. So the conditions of communitarian reading in a non-academic setting. Both groups should live in a hybrid identity. Both groups are open and ready to have a text-based dialogue. And both groups should have a strong daily engagement. Next slide. Here is the process of communitarian cross-textual reading. Actually, I still refer to the pattern from Listija Budi, but here I just add some points about dealing with empowering message, empowering meaning from the text. So both groups are celebrating the meaning of the text. And then the message of the text, they find the message from the text that resonate with their daily struggle as women. So the basis of encounter is women's experiences and women's voices in the atmosphere of socio-cultural and religious hybridity. Next slide. Yeah, still here. And then I try to develop the pattern of Daniel Listija Budi. So there are community A, community B. So both of them are ordinary readers. When it is applied in the context of grassroots communities, there should be ordinary readers with their psychosocial context, and they also exchange. They have experience to exchange textual readings, but their main focus not on the textual reflection. Their focus on the what is the reflection from the text, what the reader's reflection. So the dialogue of readers is crossing values, crossing their perspectives and experience, and it is dominant than the text, then crossing the text themselves. So the aims of this process is to strengthening their everyday dialogue. Next slide. Yeah, here is my proposal on cross-communitarian reading. So I focus on cross-communitarian reading because here the community who taking a significant role in crossing their sacred text. But when it is done in the local context, in the grassroots context, the main focus of the the religious community is not on the text, even though the basis of encounter is text, but their focus in them on their self as readers. As the readers who come with their complex issues, who approach the text, and then they just read the text, sharing their understanding and reflections from the text. So there should be selected themes that resonate with their daily life. And from the process of reading, there will be self-evaluation, self-reflectivity, and self-criticism, self-growth. Next slide. I hope it is the last one. So the highlight of the research: interreligious women are part of religious groups who have similar opportunity as men to approach the scripture. And the reading of grassroots interreligious women is legitimate as long as the reflection on text drives and inspires them to spread love and peace in the family and in the whole society, or to amplify the role as peacekeeper in that society. And it is important to articulate the role of ordinary women's readers in the hermeneutical field. Yeah, still have some recommendations, but I think later in the discussion, yeah, I can share it. Okay, thank you. That's all from me. I give it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Mila. So one of the challenge of this scriptural reading for me is the willingness to accept that other scriptures are in equal position. That's for me. And what makes this cross-communitarian reading is fabulous. What you did is how the women connect the reading with their indigenous values and daily life. So I will not summarize any further. If you want to ask question, you could raise your virtual hand, and also you could write it on the chat box and I will read it for you. If you follow this discussion on YouTube, you could also write it in the chat box. So I will open up questions. T, hello T, would you mind to open your mic and say, yeah, pick your question. Hello T, are you there? Oh, okay. You want me to read it? Mbak Mila, I have a question from T. I have a question. When people read the scripture of other religion and find that something in Islam is similar to Christianity, for example, during that process, do they ask, if Christianity is similar to Islam, why Christian not convert to Islam and believe in Muhammad, or maybe vice versa? Or is it always leads to mutual understanding only? Thank you very much. Thank you, T, for your question. Interesting. Okay, after that we have Linda. You want to answer it, or
okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think
Please.
I have to answer it now. Thank you, T, for your question. I think it is very important question. So during the process, when they found that they came from similar traditions, such as when they read the stories of Moses, because they can cross the Bible and the Quran in Indonesian translation, actually. And they find that, so the two stories are written in the Bible and in the Quran, even though there are the plot of the stories is a bit different, but the point, the solidarity of women in that stories are quite similar. So they ask why they have two similar stories, why two similar stories are written in the Bible and in the Quran, and then they are surprised if there are two similar stories, and so I try to help them by answering that both Muslim and Christian are coming from the same similar tradition, from Abrahamic tradition. So that's why we have some similar stories, similar figures in the Quran and in the Bible. And so it is stopped there. They are not questioning anymore. And then they just write, okay, this is the similar of two traditions. And then they, like, even though they're a bit surprised in the beginning, then after that, they keep it, and then I think they bring it to their community. So they already have strong engagement in their daily life with their local wisdom, with their indigenous values. But since they know they also have a similar traditions, they come from similar traditions, I think it will strengthening more. They will have strengthen daily encounter. So from the experience of crossing to different texts. So it is just for mutual understanding and mutual growth, not for conversion actually, because they still they still keep their boundary. So during the process of reading did not the process of reading are not held in the done in the religious sites such as in the mosque and in the church, but they choose the village office to be their place of encounter. So I think they still maintain their boundary, such boundary. So even though they have an encounter, they know they came from same tradition, but it doesn't lead to conversion. Yeah, thank you. I hope I can answer your question.
Interesting. Okay, Linda, you want to ask some questions?
Okay, but Mila, thank you for the informations. Like it's kind of new for me to know about the life of mixed religion people in Sumba. My first question is you said that this cross-textual, is this the term? The cross-textual is not really working for this women community in Sumba, and you said that what helped people to stay together in peace there is the local wisdom. I wonder what is the local wisdom of Sumba people, especially the place that you explained in this research. And I want to know, was there any conflict before between community in Sumba? And I mean, like usually a peaceful place, I mean, like will establish really well after the conflict. And was there any conflict there before? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay,
Thank
we
you,
have two questions from Linda. Please, Mbak.
Yeah, okay. I will answer it randomly. Okay, Mbak Linda, actually in Sumba, in that places, in two villages, there no conflicts before. They have not experienced any conflicts before, because they already live in peaceful neighborhood, because they are also bound by the kinship ties. They are local people who then become Christian and Muslims, and then but nowadays the presence of migrant Muslim from Bima, especially from Bima, becomes the fear of the local people there. Even though there are no conflict up to date, but the presence of the migrant Muslims from Bima, because they are dominant in economic sector, it causes the fear of the silent fear and silent prejudices from the local people, especially from my Christian fellows. They did not speak it because now the Muslims population is still increasing, especially in North Wendewa village, because of the presence of the migrant Muslims. So I realized that this model of reading could be done in a context of a peaceful relationship, because in the two two villages, Muslims and Christians are living in a peaceful coexistence. So and then I think it is important also to invite them to having another level of encounter, because they already have their daily life daily dialogue encounter, but I want to see the dynamics. How is their encounter? How is the dynamics when they come to different level of encounter? So I hope from the process of reading, it can preserve the long process or the long journey of daily encounter. So I mean, like the presence of the migrant Muslims, and nowadays with many issues from outside came to that place, and the internet also from the internet informations they found. I can't guarantee that their peaceful relationship can be preserved for a long time. Yeah, I don't know in the future, but for now they still live in a peaceful coexistence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Mila. Is okay, Linda, you want to following up the questions?
About the local wisdom, I wonder what's the local wisdom.
Okay, you want to know about the local wisdoms? So they have so many local wisdoms in the two villages, and they still maintain it today. There are some local wisdoms that I put in my dissertation. Actually, there are the first one is Tanyanyu Watulisi, which is becomes the philosophy of the House of the Tolerance, which means that they are living in one land, regardless of the religious, cultural, ethnicity backgrounds, and they still maintain it. And they also have another local wisdom is which means helping one another in daily encounters. So sharing meals, sharing clean water, because in Watu Asa is the most barren place. It's a driest place, no water, no clean water out there. And Muslim and Christian living in neighborhood, they share clean water, and it comes from the local wisdom values. Local wisdom that calls helping one another, means paoli or pandulawiki. It means helping others and helping oneself. When you help other, it means you help yourself. So even though they come from different religious backgrounds, they see that they are family. They are one. They still maintain their solidarity among these people, because if you don't help the others, when the others died, you are died too. So when the other in crisis, you are in crisis too. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mamila. Anyone? Is there any questions in YouTube? Yeah, we still don't have any questions. Okay, who? Oh, Muhammad Afdillah, please.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Mila, for the presentations. I have several questions actually. First, do you have kind of a particular definition of a scripture, so that you introduce it to your subject? And secondly, why did you choose Al-Qasas 28 and Exodus 1:2? What is the reason behind this? Not just, you mentioned about the similarities about the stories, but why you choose this kind of, the idea of life supporting something, pro-life action? So is there any kind of difficulties faced by the female or woman there? And the third is, how did you organize kind of the meetings between the Christian and Muslims women to discuss their views about the stories told in the Bible and the Quran, in the Al-Qasas 28 and Exodus 1:2? Because from your presentation, I have impression that they read separately. They don't meet. I don't know. That's why I don't know if you may clarify for this stuff. And the last one is about the interpretation by the woman involved in the pengajian and the what is in Christian says here in the meetings with the popular interpretation, but by men. Is there any particular differences about the interpretation of these scriptures? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 4 questions from Mas Abdillah. Oh yeah, and when Mbak Mila said Al-Qasas 28, it doesn't mean Al-Qasas verse 28, but it is Al-Qasas is the surat Al-Quran. 28, surah, not the verses.
Oh, okay.
Please,
Mbak. Thank you, Pak Muhammad, for your questions. The first one, what do you mean by scripture? Scripture means your sacred text of the religious communities. So as we know, Christian has the Bible, and then Muslims has the Quran and any other traditions. But I choose the sacred text, the Quran and the Bible, and the stories of Moses surrounding women surrounding Moses, or women's activism in saving the male infants, is written in the Surah Al-Qasas 28 and in the book of Exodus, chapter 1 and 2 in the Bible. And how do I organize the meeting? So I start with introduce it. So at the beginning, the very beginning meeting is the meeting organized by the Ministry of Religious Affairs of Central Sumba and the Religious Harmony Forum, because it's not easy for me to approach the religious communities. Maybe it's easy to approach the Christian communities because I'm a Christian pastor, so they know me. But with the Muslim communities, it's difficult for me. So I need the help of Ministry of Religious Affairs. So we have the first meeting, the very beginning meeting, and then I introduce myself and my purpose to be there and my research proposal. So then the Ministry of Religious Affairs helped me to explain it to the religious leaders, especially to the ustads, and they agree. So we start with reading in each communities. So Christian women start with their internal reading on that particular text, on the selected text, and then Muslim women start with the reading in the Majelis Taklim, because they usually have Majelis Taklim, pengajian in the recitation meeting. So in that meeting, the Ustad becomes the source person who explain the text, because in the Majelis Taklim it's not usual for Muslim women to discuss the Quran. So the Ustad himself who has the authority to explain the Quran, the stories through Tausiah. But in Christian context, women's participants are freely to discuss the text, because usually in weekly Bible study, they are women themselves in turn discuss or deliver the Bible study. So from the 2 stories, I found that it speaks about the solidarity among women, because I bring women's and I want to know how women's reading women's stories, how women's reading women's stories in their sacred text, because they are grassroots women, ordinary women who are not academically trained, and then they are, as I mentioned before in my presentation, they did not conduct any academic interpretation. So they just read the text and then find the meanings from the text that speaks, that in line with their daily experiences as women. So, and then after the internal reading, and then I move to the cross-textual reading. So in this, the cross-textual reading activities are run in 4 sessions. So 4 sessions of focus groups discussion. So in the cross-textual reading, they have a meeting, they have encounter of Muslim and Christian women. So in 4 sessions. And the first one, there is still introduction. They introduce themselves and they try to build intimacy one another, even though they already known each other in their daily interaction. But I think when they come to have a scriptural dialogue, it is also important to build their engagement in that sense. And then, so in the following meetings, they already, like, I mean, the process becomes more fluid, more friendly, warm. And what makes different? Yeah, what's the difference of women's interpretations and males' interpretations? Yeah. For example, I put in my dissertation, when the Ustads deliver the stories of Moses through his tausiah, his main focus on, even though he emphasized on the womanhood spirit, but he then said that how is the role of women to provide, to how to say that, to prepare a great leader, a great male leader. So women's role just to prepare a great male leader of Israel in the future. And but when women comes to approach the stories, Muslim women especially, they emphasize on how is the solidarity among women, how is Asia in that story save the males babies, how they cross the religious borders, even though they did not come from the similar backgrounds, they come from different countries, but they have their motherhood spirit drives them to save life, to protect life when around them there are violence. Yeah, so they're like, yeah, they employ such non-violent resistance to the Pharaoh. So it is that this kind of interpretation, this kind of reading shown by these grassroots women, which are ordinary women. So this is my finding in my research. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I hope I have answered all the questions.
Okay. Mas Abdillah, do you want to follow up?
It's okay. You can continue with the.
Yeah,
thank you for the answer.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mas Abdillah and Mbak Mila. And we have a question from Mbak Ani Marsianti. Mbak Mila, thank you for your great presentation. What I understand from your presentation is that both Muslims and Christian women are living coexistent to their similar tradition. To me, the similar tradition they live on is the glue. And Mbak Ani asked, how about the Bima migrants that have different traditions? Do you see them needed to be involved in the process of peacekeeping in that area? If so, how? Maybe you have this in mind or in your recommendation. And to what extent is the role of FKUB in Central Sumba to see this and weigh this potential issue in the future? Okay, and now we have the other party, the migrant party, the new factor. Yeah. Please, Mbak Mila.
Okay, so the participants of cross-textual reading are not only the local Muslim and local Christians, but also with the migrant Muslims from Bima. The migrant women also becomes the participants. So what I see, it's different with the men. Yeah, so women are easily to interconnect one another. So they did not bring their identities as migrant. But when they come to the process of reading, they easily engage to one another and they become more fluent to have dialogue with their Christian friends and especially with their Muslim friends and especially with their Christian friends who are a stranger before. Then after they have the cross-textual reading, they become more engaged and yeah. So, and to what extent the role of the FKUB? Yeah, actually, as we know, in many places in the many patriarchal societies, like women's activities or women's activism in daily life are not the concern of the people. And yeah, it is similar with the activities of women when they come to approach the scripture on this, when they come to scriptural dialogue. for this organization, it's not a big deal. Or just say, okay, they are women, they just want to learn from one another. Yeah, it's not for them. It's not a big one. It's just a simple thing that, they don't need to have to pay serious attention on that. So this is the problem that I find from my research. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Mila. Oh yeah, Mbak Mila, you may take a deep breath first. We have so many questions for you. So yeah, take a deep breath, or maybe you take a sip of water.
I have to drink water.
Okay, just take a water. Because I have one question from the YouTube for you. Hello, what's your name? What is name? Is it your son? What's his name?
Yeah, his name is Sion. Okay,
Sion.
Yeah.
We have a questions from YouTube from Alfian Londok. What is the difference between feminism and the woman readers in these communities? What is the difference between feminism and the woman readers in these communities? I'm not sure about these questions because it's written on YouTube, but yeah, you may respond.
Yeah, I hope I can respond it well. So when you talk about feminism, you talk about movement, yeah. But in this context, I also I apply feminist analysis to analyze or to evaluate the participation of women in the scriptural reading, in the internal circle, and when they come to have encounter with other groups. So from feminist perspectives, I found that there are gender problems faced by women in their internal group. So especially among Muslim women, they have to face the authority of interpretation or the authority of reading, which is only done by the ustads themselves. But when they come to cross-textual reading, when they are in a free space, meeting with Christian women, they become more free to express their mind, express their understanding. And during the process of reading, the ustads and the pastors are not in the circle, in the similar circle with the women, they just outside as their support to that process. They did not interfere in the process of reading. So because they thought that this is like I said before, women's activities are not too important maybe for them, or it's just women who have the reading. It's not a big matter for them. When women come to that scriptural dialogue, because they thought that women just discuss just like maybe not theological discussion. It is far from theological discussion. Maybe women usually discuss about their daily, like it's a sharing space for women, like curhat space of women. They thought like that.
Okay, thank you. I jump up to your answer actually after you mentioned about the feminism. I think I want to ask question actually a bit, because I read your paper in journal paper about this, and then what makes me wonder is the detail of knowledge that has been circulated during the discussion is amazed me. For example, the name of Moses' father. I mean, to be honest, I don't know who's the name of Musa's father, and in Quran there is no explanation about the name, and it comes for a particular hadith actually narrated by Ibnu Abbas, if I'm not mistaken. So at first I think that the woman Muslim group explored the story first and then bring it to the dialogue, as you mentioned. So my point is, from your project experience, how to prepare the dialogue so it become rich and fruitful one, as shown by your research. How significant the role of male religious leader in facilitating this discussion in preparation level? Do the idea, like the detail of the discussion, like the name of the Musa's father, the many details is usually, as you mentioned, it's they have discuss it first with the ustad, with the religious leader. So yeah, how significant the role of the male in facilitating this in preparation level?
Yeah. I think the role of the male leaders are very significant. Is very significant because the women's, because they are ordinary women, Muslim women, they know the names and the names of the figures from that stories, from the ustads, and also they bring their such commentary books. Some of them having, because some of them are teachers, they have their commentary books. So when they come to the cross-textual reading space, they bring the commentary books, because in that process they did not only, like I said, even though they find the relevance of the text, but they still also discuss, like to find the commonalities from the two different texts and the differences. So the differences is mainly about the different names in the two different texts. So here I found that the role of the male leaders is very significant to facilitate the process of cross-textual reading, the preparation of cross-textual reading. Because when they come to meet with the Christian women, they did not come with their empty brain. They have something in their mind they bring to discuss, in the name of the religious group, actually.
And after the project, I mean, after the discussion, these commentaries, cross commentaries reading, do what the woman interpretations, the group interpretation, is it also influence the male religious leader? So after the male religious leader come into this discussion, hear from the woman, does it affect also the male to interpret the scripture differently after they hear this kind of wonderful process?
Yeah, I don't know after that, but so far what I know is from the discussion of women in that cross-textual reading space, at least the role of women is should be taken seriously by the male leaders. And then after that, from that reading, so women's then at the end of the cross-textual reading, they said that they have to build such programs in such activities, join programs in the social programs, social activities in the neighborhood. So they want to do to cleaning the area or do any programs, such economic programs or seminars on domestic violence or any other issues. So they arrange the following programs that they have to do together. When they can work together and they can advocate together for the women's issues. Thank you.
Wow, wonderful.
Phew,
very wonderful. Okay, and we have 70 minutes more, and everyone want to ask a question, one or two? Okay, YouTube is on.
I hope it finishes.
Okay.
Tired.
Okay. So no one?
Yeah.
I have one.
Okay,
Please.
The Pamungkas.
Okay, Pamungkas, yeah. Thank you very much, Abdi. Mbak Mila, thank you very much. I am thinking of a challenging question for you to see. I mean, you know, as you said, at least in your background, that Sumba people, both Muslims and Christians, have been living peacefully based on their local wisdom. I think this is to follow up Linda's questions. But when you come to thinking about creating dialogue, communitarian
cross-textual
readings, have you ever thought that local wisdom may be considered as quote unquote scriptural text for you to include in the creative dialogue, to enrich the dialogue, because you have already found that it has already contributed very significantly the way people have lived their daily life peacefully. And so, like, if you're thinking about it, don't you think that they would even contribute to the way people would read the text, the scriptures, the Christian and Muslim scriptures? I mean, using, especially if you're thinking about agencies have shaped by, culture. The way people become the agents, are very much influenced by, the culture, their life. And so local wisdom, should play very important roles in that. So have you ever thought about that? Like, for you not to limit the Abrahamic religion, but thinking like more, we also heard from Pak Daniel, hermeneutic, hermeneutic scriptural readings include not only the text, and I think that is the post-colonial critics to the interpretation, by focusing only to the text, but we also need to see the ordinary people, the way they become Christian, the way they become Muslims, not mainly based on text, but based on their life, their daily life. So thinking about that, is it possible for you to bring in the same level whatever you may call local wisdom, but the people have been thinking and living with in their daily life, to bring into dialogue, into the table for, inter-religious cultural dialogue? Thank you, Mbak Mila.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Ancu. Yeah, the question is, Ancu is wrapping up the question from Linda and also Mas Akbila when they asked about what do you mean by scripture? Could the oral tradition also be a scripture?
Okay.
Scripture, something like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mas Ancu, for the fruitful question for me, and the critical comments too. So at the beginning, actually, to be honest, at the beginning of my research project, I want to involve the Marapu women, the Christian women, and Muslim women to have cross-textual readings. But I know it is impossible for me due to the limitation, to the time limit and many things, and due to the ownership of written text, because the Marapu text did not have written text. But and then I thought that based on my discussion with my promoters, then I thought that, and the atmosphere of cross-textual reading, it should be the hybrid socio-religious hybridity of the people. And what I found from my research is the people in the two villages, especially in Watu as a village, and two villages of in general, they live in the local wisdom values. So the basis of the encounter, as I mentioned in my presentation, is also the local based values. And I think this is also the scripture, the living scripture of the people, not only the written scripture they have from the religious tradition, but they already have the living scripture, which is becomes the foundation of the daily encounter. And it becomes also the motto, or the philosophy of the monument of tolerance, house of tolerance, which is Tanyanyu Watulisi, which means one people, one land, regardless of the religious backgrounds, ethnicity, and any other backgrounds they have. So we are family, we are sister brothers, and that mottos promote. And here, that's why I recommend for the participation of like the local atmospheres or the participation of local people. I also challenge. For me, I criticize also my research because this research is open to be criticized and open to be followed up by further research. And your proposal or your comments can be my recommendation to the further research. If anyone want to work with communitarian reading, so it is important to also to think about the presence of local values or the local wisdoms. But in my research, I also put that the local values becomes the atmosphere. That's why in the third chapter, when I explain about the demography of the two villages, so I also put the relations of Muslims and Christians within like in the frame of interreligious, in the frame of local values. Yeah. Okay, Mas Ancu, I hope I answer your question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now is for 2:30. And thank you very much, Mbak Mila, and thank you very much everyone for more than 1.5 hours fruitful and critical discussions. And I will not conclude this presentation and discussion because as the communal readings goes, each one of us has their own reflections, and let the thousands of flowers blooms. And for all of you who start their first day of Lent, may your Ash Wednesday be a time of reflection and promise. And for our brother and sister who will start Nyepi ritual just few hours from now, selamat melaksanakan Catur Brata in Saka New Year 1944. And don't forget, next week in the same hour, we will have Kak Mirna Safitri, from Badan Restorasi Gambut and Mangrove, who will talk about religion and peat and mangrove conservations. So everyone, see you on the next Wednesday. Stay healthy, and stay happy, of course. Assalamualaikum, rahayu, 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 shalom. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye everyone.
Bye-bye Mbak
Terima
Mila.
kasih Mbak Mila.
Bye
Terima
dah.
kasih semuanya, Mas Abdi,
Mas
Mas
Abdillah,
Ancu,
terima
Mbak Linda,
kasih.
dan semuanya.
Mbak Arni, terima kasih.
Dadah Ancu.
Mbak Ida, Mas
Dadah.
Abdi.
Alhamdulillah, nanti kalau saya jadi keliling NTT tak mampir
Mbak
ya.
Ani,
Ya, datang ke Sumba ya. Datang ke Sumba.
Iya.
Yang bertanya-bertanya semoga bisa berkunjung.
Siap.
Ya, ditunggu. Ya, dadah semuanya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Dadah.
Ini udah bisa live ya? Udah bisa live ya?
Monggo,
Ya.
silakan.
Bye-bye.